Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. If you're here, buckle up, because nothing about what happened to me makes sense. Even I still question if it was real sometimes. It started the morning a pigeon hit my window. No, seriously. A full-grown pigeon, feathers and all, just slammed into the kitchen window while I was microwaving leftover soup. That's the only reason I walked outside. Otherwise, I never would have seen it, what she left for him on the passenger seat of his truck. It was a gift bag. Red, crumpled like it had been recycled from Christmas, with a small white note taped to the front. I don't know what possessed me to check it. I guess deep down, some ugly little voice in me had already started connecting dots I'd been too scared to see clearly. The note said, "Use this when you miss me. Yours, always. T." My hands were shaking before I even peeked inside. I shouldn't have looked. Inside, a black silk tie, folded neatly, and a small photo of her. In my shirt. The one she wore when she said it was her comfort top. I dropped the bag. I remember that clearly. I dropped it like it burned. I didn't confront her. Didn't shout. Didn't cry. I walked back inside. Washed the soup bowl. Turned off my phone. Then I disappeared. And I stayed gone for a whole year. No calls. No texts. No updates. Not even to my family. I rebuilt myself from the ground up in the middle of nowhere, started going by my middle name, dyed my hair, started journaling under a pen name, and for once in my life, I stopped begging the universe to explain everything. Until 3 nights ago. When someone knocked on the door of my tiny, rented cabin. And I opened it. And saw her. Dripping wet, crying, clutching that same red gift bag like it had followed her across the country. She whispered, "Please, I didn't know what I had until it was gone. I didn't know what you meant until the silence." Reddit, she says she wants forgiveness. But I don't know if I ever want to hear her voice again. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. That somehow, grief or guilt or one too many sleepless nights had conjured her ghost. But ghosts don't shiver. Ghosts don't cry. And ghosts definitely don't clutch red gift bags like they're sacred. She looked thinner. Not the kind of thin that comes from dieting, but the kind you see in people who haven't been sleeping. Her red curls were soaked and stuck to her cheeks, her mascara smudged like she hadn't even bothered to wipe it. Her shoes were muddy. Her breathing, uneven. "Tessa." I said. I didn't mean to say her name. It just slipped out like muscle memory. She looked up at me with this wild, broken expression I'd never seen before, not even during our worst fights. Not even the day we buried her mother. This was different. This was desperation. "I know," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve to be here. But I had to find you." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. My tongue felt like paper. My hands were frozen on the doorknob. I could hear the rain thumping on the cabin roof behind me, could smell the firewood still smoldering in the hearth. But nothing felt real. Not her. Not this moment. I should have closed the door. I should have walked away. But instead, I stepped aside. She took one cautious step inside, like I might change my mind. Her eyes flicked around the room, at the worn couch, the piles of books, the scratched-up floorboards. Her gaze paused on the yellow legal pad where I'd been journaling minutes before she knocked. She said nothing, but I watched her eyes water when she saw her name scribbled over and over across the page. "You still write," she said softly. "About me?" I didn't answer. We stood there in silence for a while. I kept waiting for her to speak first, to offer some rehearsed apology, some excuse that would justify the image burned into my brain from a year ago. But she didn't start with that. She started with something worse. "I left him," she said. "Months ago. I thought it would make everything better, but it didn't. It just made the silence louder. I turned away. I couldn't look at her and not remember the tie. The note. That ridiculous smile she only ever gave me, in a photo meant for someone else. You came all this way to tell me you're sad. I muttered, bitterness creeping into my voice. That your affair wasn't worth it after all. She flinched. No. I came because I never stopped thinking about you, she said. Because I thought you'd call. Even once. I thought you'd scream at me. Or send hate mail. Or tell my family. But you didn't. You just disappeared. Like I died. I wish I could say her words meant nothing to me. I wish I could say I stood there strong, stoic, impenetrable. But the truth? The second she said, "You just disappeared," I felt my throat tighten. Because she was right. I didn't even give her the dignity of an ending. I just vanished into the shadows of her guilt. And for a while, that made me feel powerful. For once, I had control. But now that she was here, soggy, shaking, and softer than I remembered, I realized just how little healing I'd done. I'm not the man you left, I finally said. I don't think I can be him again. She stepped closer. Carefully. Slowly. Like approaching a wounded animal. I'm not asking for him, she said. I'm asking for you. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in a year, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hatred. I felt fear. Because the part of me she shattered was starting to want her back. I told her she could stay the night. Not because I wanted her to. Not because I forgave her. But because the rain kept pounding like it had a personal vendetta against my cabin, and I didn't have the cruelty to send her back into it. She sat on the couch, soaked, clutching that red gift bag like it still held whatever piece of her dignity remained. I stood at the window for an hour, maybe more, not speaking. I couldn't. My mind was moving too fast. What was I supposed to say? Welcome back. I hope betrayal tasted sweet. She didn't try to make herself comfortable. She sat stiff, like a guest in a stranger's home, wringing her hands as the fire crackled and spat behind her. The silence between us was so thick, I could feel it in my teeth. I thought maybe she'd cry again, fall to her knees, give me a dramatic confession that would make this feel like closure. But instead, she asked something so simple it made my spine stiffen. Why did you disappear like that, Lowell? Why no goodbye? Why not even a single word? I turned toward her, slowly, and I could feel the tremble in my jaw before I spoke. Because if I stayed even one more night, I would have begged you to love me again. That shut her up. She looked down at her hands, probably realizing I wasn't the man she remembered. I wasn't the passive Lowell who cleaned her car on Sundays and left little notes in her lunchbox. I was someone hollow now. Someone quieter. Someone slower to speak because the words I used to offer so freely had been used against me. She finally reached into the red bag and pulled something out I hadn't expected, my old sweatshirt. The faded one with the university logo half peeled off, the one she used to wear after her night shifts. She held it like it still smelled like the man I used to be. I didn't fall in love with him, she said suddenly, without looking up. I need you to know that. I didn't say anything. He was just there. When you were falling apart after the layoff, when you stopped looking at me like I mattered, when you started sleeping on the couch. I clenched my fists. So it's my fault. No. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying. I let it happen. I knew what I was doing. I knew it was a line I couldn't uncross, and I crossed it anyway. And every time I smiled at you after it started, every dinner I made you while hiding it, I hated myself a little more. She finally looked up. And I hated how easy it was for you to leave. I deserved the screaming. The shame. I deserved to be destroyed. But instead you gave me nothing. Just, silence. I laughed. Bitterly. I thought that's what you wanted. Space. No more, sad professor moping around the house energy. She blinked, stunned that I used her own words against her. Yeah, I'd seen that text too. The one she sent him. He's like a deflated balloon. I can't even stand to watch him brush his teeth. I almost told her that. Almost threw it in her face just to see if she'd wince. But I didn't. Because as much as I hated her for what she did, part of me still wanted to be the guy she could talk to. Part of me still wanted her to choose me, not out of guilt, but because she remembered who I was before she made me feel invisible. The night stretched long. She didn't ask to sleep in my bed. She curled up on the couch, facing the fire, still clutching that sweatshirt like it held our past. And when I walked down the hall toward my room, I looked back just once. Her eyes were already open. She hadn't stopped watching me. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, counting the creaks in the wood above me, listening to every tiny sound from the living room. Once or twice, I thought I heard her crying. Once, I thought I heard her whisper something to herself. Or maybe to me. I wasn't sure. My heart wasn't racing, it was tired. You know that kind of exhaustion that isn't physical? Where your muscles don't ache, but your memories do. That's what it felt like. Every version of myself that ever trusted her was laid out on the floor of my mind, dead and still clutching flowers. The next morning, she was still there. Sitting on the floor now, barefoot, hair tied up in a loose knot. She looked like she belonged in the wreckage of something sacred. And I guess, in a way, she did. Did you sleep? She asked softly, looking up at me. No. She nodded like she expected that. Then, without warning, she said, I want to tell you everything now. I didn't answer. But I didn't walk away either. She took that as permission. I met him at my cousin's engagement dinner, she said. You didn't come. You said you were too anxious around her side of the family. I went alone. I remember that night. I'd been spiraling after the layoff. Her family always treated me like I was the unpaid intern in my own marriage. I stayed home and drank too much wine on the back porch, thinking I was reclaiming some kind of dignity by not going. He was charming, she continued. Harmless, at first. He knew I was married. He said all the right things, but I laughed him off. Then he found me on Instagram. Messaged me. I ignored it. For a while. My chest was tight. I wanted to scream, you could have blocked him. But instead I asked, why didn't you? Because I liked being wanted, she said quickly, eyes darting down. You were slipping away. You were angry and quiet and everything felt heavy in the house. I'd get home and the lights would be off and you'd be curled up in bed at 8 p.m. I felt like I was dragging a corpse around. And when he messaged me, he made me feel like I wasn't sinking. So it was my fault, I said. Not a question. Just a flat accusation. She shook her head. No. It was mine. Entirely. I let my fear of confrontation become betrayal. I didn't want to talk about our marriage because I knew it would be messy and hard and real. And this guy, he was none of those things. He was fake and fun and flattering. She swallowed hard. It lasted 4 months. We met 6 times. I winced. You counted? Yes, she said, and her voice cracked. I counted because I needed to remember exactly how many times I chose to be someone else. The words just sat in the room like fog. Thick. Poisonous. I didn't know what to do with that kind of honesty. I didn't know what she expected from me. A reaction. A breakdown. A second chance. You always wanted truth, she said. So I'm giving it to you now. I told him I loved you. Even while I was with him. I told him I'd never leave you. That you were broken, but you were mine. And then one night, when he asked me what I saw in you. She trailed off. I waited. She looked me right in the eyes. I couldn't answer. Because I realized I hadn't seen you in months. I was just looking past you, like you were furniture. It was the cruelest kindness she could have offered me. That night, I went for a walk. Left her in the cabin alone. I walked down to the lake, watched the wind turn the surface into 1,000 tiny cuts of silver. I thought about disappearing again. Starting fresh somewhere even more remote. Changing my name for real this time. Erasing the last trace of myself. But I didn't. Because despite everything she confessed, I still wanted her to see me again. And I hated myself for it. I didn't come back inside until after midnight. The moon was thin and sharp above the lake, like it was judging me for not walking farther, for not keeping my back turned for good. But I couldn't. My feet betrayed me, the same way my heart had when she looked at me through tears and told me she never stopped loving me. When I opened the cabin door, it was quiet. No fire in the hearth. Just the ticking of the old clock above the mantel and the low hum of the refrigerator. Tessa was asleep on the couch again, knees tucked up, that same old sweatshirt clutched to her chest. I hated how peaceful she looked. Like guilt had finally exhausted itself and collapsed. I walked past her, careful not to make a sound. I wanted to be alone with my thoughts, to breathe in the silence, to try and rebuild some wall around myself before she woke up again and started poking at it with more confessions. But then I saw something I wasn't meant to see. A piece of paper. Folded. Tucked beside her duffel bag on the counter. Curiosity got the better of me. I shouldn't have touched it. I know that. But I did. And as soon as I unfolded it, I realized it wasn't meant for me. It was addressed to him. Mark. I can't keep doing this. It was supposed to be a distraction, but now it's a weight. I thought I needed freedom. I thought I needed to feel wild again. But all I feel is sick. Lowell doesn't deserve what I did to him. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me, or if he should. But I'm going to try. Please don't contact me again. This isn't who I want to be anymore. My hands trembled as I set it down. The name hit me like a punch to the ribs. Mark. I had a name now. The shadow man behind all the smiling texts and restaurant receipts. And what stung the most wasn't her apology, it was the fact that she'd written him a goodbye letter. She gave him closure. A whole page of words explaining why she was walking away. And me? I got a cold, silent bed and a year of screaming into empty notebooks. I stood there, breath shallow, heart thudding like it wanted to burst through my ribs. And then I did something I hadn't done since the day I left. I cried. Not just tears. I broke. I sat down on the floor like a child and let it all out. The humiliation. The rage. The loneliness. The regret. I cried for the version of me that used to believe in fairy tales. I cried for the man who used to leave flowers on her dashboard, who made her playlists, who memorized her coffee order down to the temperature. That man was gone. She buried him. And no amount of late-night confessions or sorry-sounding letters could resurrect him. When the tears finally stopped, it was nearly morning. Tessa was still asleep, unaware that I now knew everything, including the fact that she'd been trying to find peace with him even while crawling back to me. So I did something I hadn't planned. I wrote her a letter, too. Tessa. I'm glad you told me the truth. I needed it more than I realized. But you also gave someone else your goodbye, someone who didn't deserve it. You chose to give him soft closure and gave me silence. You say you didn't love him. That you never stopped loving me. But love isn't a memory. It's a choice. One you stopped making long before the affair. I don't know where this leaves us. I don't know if I'll ever trust you again. But I do know this: if you want to rebuild anything, it starts with telling me the things you thought only he should hear. I left the letter on the kitchen table, right beside her cold cup of tea. And when she woke up to find it, the expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. She had more to say. A lot more. The silence after she read my letter was terrifying. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just sat there at the kitchen table, hunched over, her fingers pressed to her lips like they were holding back a scream. The letter I left her was still in her hand, creased and shaking. I stayed near the door, leaning against the frame, my arms crossed like that could somehow shield me from whatever truth was coming next. "Tessa," I finally said. "Why did you give him the goodbye and not me?" She didn't look up. "Because I didn't know how to say goodbye to you," she whispered. "Because saying it to you would have made it real." "Yeah, well, it was real. You just didn't have to deal with the fallout." Her eyes snapped to mine. "Do you think I didn't suffer?" I laughed bitterly. "You were in someone else's arms while I was throwing up in a motel bathroom 3 states away because I couldn't eat for 3 days. You don't know what suffering is." She stood up fast, like my words had slapped her. The chair screeched across the wood. "You think I didn't hate myself?" she snapped. "Every single day. You think I didn't wait by the phone, praying you'd call and scream at me so I could feel like I still mattered enough to be hated?" "You didn't deserve hate," I said coldly. "You deserved nothing." Her face crumpled. And for a moment, I hated myself. Because even after everything, I still didn't want to hurt her. That was the worst part. The betrayal didn't kill the love. It just twisted it until it felt like shame. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding for a year. "Did you sleep with him in our house?" She froze. Completely. I stepped closer, the knot in my stomach threatening to snap. "In our bed?" I asked again, more firmly this time. "Did you bring him into our home?" Tears pooled in her eyes. She tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. "No," she finally croaked. "But I wanted to." The room went silent. She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I thought about it." He asked. Begged. I told him no. I told him I wouldn't cross that line. But the fact that I even considered it. I hate myself for that. I walked away. I had to. I went outside, barefoot, the cold dirt biting into my skin. I needed air, but it was like the entire forest was choking me. The trees, the fog, the wet grass, it all felt like a graveyard for the man I used to be. I didn't cry this time. I didn't scream. I just stood there, wishing the wind would carry me far away. She came out 10 minutes later, her voice softer. "I wrote the letter to him so I could pretend I was ending a chapter. But I came here because I never wrote one to you. And maybe that was my mistake." "No," I said. "Your mistake wasn't forgetting the letter. It was forgetting me." I didn't yell it. I didn't need to. The quiet hit harder. She looked like she was about to collapse. I almost wanted to catch her. But I didn't. I stood there, arms limp at my sides, while she knelt down on the cabin porch like her legs couldn't carry the weight of her regret anymore. "I can't ask you to come back to what we had," she whispered. "But I need to know if there's anything, left inside you that wants to build something new." I looked at her for a long time. And the terrifying truth was, I didn't know. We spent the rest of that day pretending we weren't both suffocating. She cooked eggs like it was a normal morning. I washed the pan afterward like I used to, trying not to notice how she still hummed under her breath when she stirred. The same melody. The one I used to love. Now it just made me want to punch a wall. I didn't. But I wanted to. And maybe that's worse. I stayed on my side of the cabin. She didn't follow. For hours we tiptoed around each other like ghosts still tied to the same ruin. Every now and then, we'd meet eyes, and I'd feel that flicker, that stupid flicker, of what used to be. But it burned out as fast as it sparked, smothered under the weight of everything unsaid. Everything broken. It was almost sunset when she finally spoke again. I was sitting on the porch, arms around my knees, watching the trees bleed into orange and rust. She stepped out, barefoot, holding something I didn't recognize. A faded yellow folder, stuffed and worn at the edges. Her hands trembled. "I need to show you something," she said. I didn't move. "I started this the week after you left. I've added to it every day." She sat beside me without asking if she could. Opened the folder and pulled out a mess of letters, printed emails, and torn notebook pages. Every one of them had my name on it. Some were dated. Others just started mid-thought, like she'd poured her guilt out between laundry and work and empty wine glasses. She didn't hand them to me. She read them out loud. Just a few lines at first. Then more. Her voice cracked. Her hands shook. Some letters were furious, demanding to know why I'd abandoned her. Others were just, pathetic. Pleading. One was nothing but a list of memories, ending with the words, "Why did I trade this for a 4-month fantasy?" I hated how much it hurt to hear them. Not because she was in pain. But because there was a part of me that still wanted her words to mean something. She kept reading. Letters she never sent. Messages she'd written but deleted. Even voice memos transcribed on paper, things she'd recorded alone in her car just to feel like she was saying them to me. One line shattered me. "I used to say Lowell was the safest place I ever knew. But then I made him unsafe. And now I'm scared of the world without him." I closed my eyes. She placed the folder in my lap. "You don't have to read the rest now," she whispered. "But I needed you to know I never stopped talking to you. Even when you weren't there. I wanted to say something. Anything. But nothing came. Just this overwhelming ache behind my ribs, a sharp, slow-throbbing ache that no medicine could dull." We sat like that for a long time. Her, watching the sky. Me, staring at the folder like it might explode. And then she asked a question I never expected. "Can I see it?" I blinked. "See what?" "Your journal." I hesitated. That journal had been my therapy. My only outlet. The one place I didn't edit myself. It was full of rage. Of desperation. Of words I'd never imagined saying aloud. But, something in her tone wasn't selfish. She didn't want to be forgiven. She just wanted to understand the damage. I went inside. Picked it up. Brought it back. I didn't say anything when I placed it in her hands. She opened it. Read the first line. And her lips started to tremble. I don't think I'll ever stop loving her. But I also don't think I'll ever believe her again. She looked up at me slowly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Is that still true?" I didn't know. So I told her the only truth I had left. "I think, part of me is still waiting to see if you're capable of the woman I used to believe in." She closed the journal and pulled her knees to her chest. And for the first time since she arrived, she didn't try to apologize. She just sat beside me. Quiet. Small. Human. Like maybe, finally, we were both out of words. It rained again the next morning. Not the loud, angry storm kind. Just a soft, steady drizzle that made the whole forest smell like pine and soil and forgiveness. I woke up before her. She was curled up on the couch again, my journal clutched against her chest like it was the only evidence I still felt anything. Her face was peaceful. Not smiling, not yet, but still. Like something inside her had finally stopped spinning. I didn't want to wake her. I made coffee instead. Listened to the cabin creak with the weight of a long night. Watched the fog roll across the lake like a curtain drawing back on something new. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel the ache in my chest trying to break me open. When she finally stirred, I didn't speak. I just poured her a cup, slid it across the counter, and waited. She looked at me like she wasn't sure if this was a dream. And then she whispered, "I want to stay. Not to fix us. Not yet. I just want to learn who you are again. And let you see who I've become." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. But I poured her another cup of coffee that afternoon. And I let her stay. The days that followed weren't magical. We didn't fall back into place. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. We just talked. Like strangers trying to decide if the wreckage between them could be turned into something honest. She helped me repaint the cabin porch. I read her parts of my writing out loud. She showed me old letters she'd written to herself during the silence, not just apologies, but brutal truths about who she'd been and who she was trying to become. There was one moment, late at night, fire crackling, both of us cross-legged on the floor, when I asked her, "Why now? Why not 6 months ago?" She looked right at me and said, "Because 6 months ago, I wanted to be forgiven. Now, I want to be better." And that's when I knew. This wasn't about saving a marriage. It was about saving ourselves. Rebuilding trust didn't start with a vow or a kiss or a promise. It started with sitting in the mess, together, and saying, "We're still here." Maybe that's love. Or maybe it's just the start of something else entirely. But for now, it's enough. Thanks for listening, and if this story hit you in any way, if you've ever been in a moment where silence said more than words, or where forgiveness felt impossible but hope still found a way, drop a comment below and share your own turning point. Did someone ever surprise you with growth? Did you walk away, or did you stay and rebuild? Let us know down below, we'd love to hear your story. You've been watching Reddit Confessions, where real emotions meet the power of healing. If this story moved you, leave a like, subscribe, and tell us. Would you have let her stay? Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.